Has Arcadia that little space remains for history, which has largely passed the region by, making Arcadia a modern metaphor for a timeless bucolic paradise. For the Spartan historian, the Peloponnese gets really interesting as we approach the southern end, where the dragon's claw extends 3 roughly equidistant talons southward towards Africa. The eastern talon is Marlia, the central is Taenaron, and the western talon is stubby Akritas. Like knuckles behind each talon, there lies a mountain range behind and extending into each peninsula. The knuckle which interests us most is behind the central peninsula of Taenaron. This is the Taygetos Range, the highest peak of which is Mount Taygetos. This mountain has a hugely significant role in our story, and is, incidentally, the oldest named peak in Europe, thanks to a mention by Homer in the Odyssey. The Taygetos Range itself is significant because the valley to the east, watered by the river Eurotas, comprises the fertile part of Laconia wherein Sparta lies. To the west, on the other side of the Taygetos Range, flows the parallel Pamisos River. The land around the river Pamisos is Messenia, a region both flat, by Peloponnesian standards, and highly fertile, ditto, divided in two by a single intruding mountain range. This brisk geographical survey shows that while all of the Peloponnese is pretty small, the area of Laconia, mountains and all, takes up less than a quarter of the whole, being some 1,500 square miles in total. Or, to put it another way, after mastering Laconia, Sparta dominated an empire about 49 miles long and 35 miles wide. To expand further, the Spartans had to either get through the Taygetos Range to the west, the inhospitable mass of Arcadia to the north, or take their chances with the open sea. Note, though, that the ancient Mediterranean was mostly closed to navigation in the winter months, and though Sparta itself seldom saw snow, enough fell on the Taygetos Range to make crossing the passes very difficult. For much of the year, Laconia was basically cut off. To these physical barriers were added psychological ones. The same obstacles that made it hard for Sparta to break out of Laconia made it equally difficult for anyone else to get in. With isolation, Sparta developed an insular, parochial outlook, a sense of being different and special. Much as Sparta later became enthusiastic about projecting Spartan power as far afield as possible, the city's rulers were well aware that this had to be done while projecting abroad as few actual Spartans as possible. Outside their own unique society, Spartans had a distressing inability to control themselves, let alone any putative subject peoples. Therefore, no matter how great a power the city was to become, mentally it remained a small, mountain-bound state buried in the side of the Taygetos Massif. Origins Part 1. Archaeology. Who were the Spartans? Where did they come from? There are 2 answers to this question. Though both answers agree on certain points, they're very different, though both are true according to the perspective of the person making the inquiry. Human settlement in the Peloponnese goes well back into prehistory. Archaeologists have discovered sites almost 50,000 years old. The first humans who occupied these sites came through the narrow isthmus of Corinth and formed tight, isolated communities in the sheltered valleys between mountain ranges. However, even the archaeological picture of these first hunter-gatherer settlements is patchy until the agricultural revolution of some 8,000 years ago. Life in Laconia would have been far from easy for these early farmers, but at least the climate was mild, conditions were good for agriculture, assuming one had limited ambitions concerning the size and diversity of harvests, and the mountains limited both the number of predators and raids from warlike fellow humans. A summer drought with rainfall in spring and autumn made the location suitable for 2 grain harvests a year, a crop cycle which continued into the classical era. Many settlements were not permanent. Poor understanding of land use meant that low-quality soils were easily worked out and eroded, and a fluctuating climate brought its own problems. In 2015, archaeologists found a complete prehistoric city underwater off the coast of the Argolid, submerged by changing sea levels. Nevertheless, some sites were long settled and appear to have endured for millennia. The valley of the Eurotas was one of the most fertile in Greece, and settlement here was relatively dense. Pottery shards and commonality of artifacts show that the various settlements